Hi and welcome. I'm AnewZ and you are watching AnewZ. Here are the headlines. Ukrainian and Russian delegations meet in Istanbul for a third round of peace talks. US President Donald Trump announces trade agreement with Japan. Syria officially requests Turkey's help to strengthen defense and combat terrorism. Thank you for tuning in. Russian and Ukrainian delegations are meeting once again for peace talks in Istanbul. Delegation heads Vladimir Medinsky and Rustem Umerov are holding a one-on-one meeting ahead of the third round of talks, which is set to be chaired by Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. The fresh talks follow earlier agreements on prisoner exchanges struck during the previous two rounds of negotiations. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar met his Ukrainian counterpart Andriy Sybiha in Kyiv to discuss defense ties and regional threats with a focus on Iran. During the visit, the two inspected a captured Iranian-designed drone used by Russia, which has played a major role in long-range attacks on Ukraine. Kyiv has repeatedly accused Iran of supplying such drones to Russia. At a joint briefing, Saar and Sybiha announced the launch of a strategic dialogue between their ministries to, quote, counter the Iranian threat.
Against the backdrop of these threats, we agreed to intensify multilateral and bilateral cooperation. And today, we decided to launch a separate dialogue on the Iranian threat. We agreed on this with the minister. I expressed gratitude to Israel for humanitarian assistance, in particular, a project in the field of water supply to the southern regions of Ukraine.
We condemn Russia's strikes against civilians. We call for a durable and lasting peace which ensures security for Ukraine.
US President Donald Trump has threatened Iran with possible further strikes after Tehran has said it will not abandon nuclear enrichment. Iran also admitted 3 of its nuclear sites were severely damaged in American airstrikes last month.
I thought it was great, but then I did something.
US President Donald Trump has threatened further military action against Iran's nuclear facilities, just weeks after American jets struck 3 sites during Israel's conflict with Tehran. On his Truth Social account, Trump posted, "Of course the damages in Iran are severe," he said, "and we will do it again if necessary." That message came in direct response to Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, who told Fox News on Monday that Iran's enrichment program had suffered serious setbacks but would not be abandoned.
Damages are serious and severe, but obviously we cannot give up our enrichment because it is an achievement of our own scientists, and now more than that, it is a question of national pride.
The US airstrikes on Iran in June hit Fordow, Natanz and Isfahan, their key facilities in Iran's nuclear network. Though Trump had claimed that they were completely obliterated, US intelligence later assessed the program had only been delayed by a few months, a report that the White House called flat out wrong. Meanwhile, Iran says it's preparing for new nuclear talks with European nations in Istanbul this Friday, the first since the Israel and Iran ceasefire last month. The talks will focus on sanctions relief and Iran's nuclear commitments, coming amid the fallout of last month's US airstrikes. Tehran maintains its program is peaceful, but with threats of further military action, the diplomatic path looks increasingly fragile.
On the latest surrounding Iran's nuclear program and the escalation of rhetoric ahead of Tehran's talks with the Europeans on Friday, we're talking with nuclear energy expert Luis Guimarães, joining us from Lisbon. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Now, after Iran's foreign minister said Tehran will not give up nuclear enrichment, even though the operations are currently on pause because of severe damage, Donald Trump warned that the United States could hit the sites again if necessary. Now, Tehran has since said that a technical team of the IAEA will be allowed to visit in the coming weeks to discuss a new modality on relations between the nuclear watchdog and Iran. Would you say that this is a step in the right direction?
Hello, good evening. Thank you for having me. Yes, I mean, the IAEA is the necessary boots on the ground at the moment. So they are actually the neutral eyes that the world needs at the moment. So the IAEA has been very, very hampered in their ability to conduct proper oversight because, let's face it, like the footage we just saw, the nuclear program in Iran is part of their identity. It's kind of like the moon program for the Soviets and the Americans in the 60s. So there's a matter of pride, there's a matter of identity. So it's very hard to have an entire population hampering your investigations when the IAEA itself is perceived as and not a biased entity. So this is a very, very welcomed step in the right direction.
Looking ahead to Friday and the meeting of Iranians with the 3 European signatories of the original nuclear deal from 2015, what would you say could be on the table? Do you see these discussions including some specific numbers, some enrichment limitations in exchange for not activating the UN sanctions snapback mechanism?
Yes, so history, I have to say I'm kind of a pessimistic on this on the next weekend because in 2003 to 2005, the European three, so the UK, France, and Germany already conducted some negotiations with Iran. So Iran would always it would always be against relief of sanctions, but the EU countries did not give Iran the conditions they were needed. So there were 2 years of negotiations between 2003 and 2005 that were kind of wasted time, and basically only later on in 2013 where the negotiations started in the right direction. So I hope that the new leadership, especially Germany, I hope that Friedrich Merz knows what is laser focused, that he's not as ideological in these nuclear terms as their predecessors Schultz and Merkel were. So I hope that there is a lot more. I'm hoping there is a lot more sanity at the time involved in the next weekend.
Tehran has said it is still open for indirect talks with the US, now given the history and Washington leaving the original deal that curbed Iran's nuclear program and Tehran then surpassing all the agreement's limits. What kind of a deal do you think might be made now, keeping in mind that Trump was the one who pulled the US out from the JCPOA during his first term?
Yes, so the 2018 was a very, very rash decision by the Trump administration, in my opinion. I think nobody's sure when Trump is involved at the moment in geopolitics, unfortunately. But the history shows that Iran actually relented in their enrichment efforts whenever sanctions relief was involved. So we are talking about in 2016 when the IAEA verified that Iran was fulfilling their enrichment goals. We are talking about $100 billion in unfrozen assets. So not only sanctions, but probably unfrozen assets are on the table. I hope, and I actually hope that this time colder heads will prevail, and then democracy. I hope negotiations go ahead. I hope diplomacy makes the region a little more safer every day.
Luis, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insight.
Thank you.
In other news, Donald Trump has announced what he calls a historic trade deal with Japan, lowering tariffs and pledging major Japanese investment in America. But with limited details and mixed industry reactions, questions remain over the true scope of the agreement.
I presented to you on
President Donald Trump has claimed a victory on what he's calling the largest trade deal in history with Japan. The agreement cuts tariffs on Japanese goods from 25% to 15% and brings a massive investment pledge from Tokyo worth $550 billion. However, many of the deal's details remain unclear.
But I just signed the largest trade deal in history. I think maybe the largest deal in history with Japan. And that was done with Japan. They had their top people here, and we worked on it long and hard, and it's a great deal for everybody. I always say it has to be great for everybody. It's a great deal. A lot different from the deals in the past, I can tell you that. But we're doing really well as a country. We're strong.
Trump also says the US will have greater access to Japanese markets for American goods, including cars, trucks, and agricultural products. Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says the deal also boosts energy cooperation between the two allies.
We also confirmed that we will cooperate to strengthen energy security between the two countries, including increasing exports of the United States, liquefied natural gas to Japan in a mutually beneficial manner.
While Trump touted the deal on Truth Social, both the White House and Japan's foreign ministry have yet to provide full details. And with the 1st of August tax hike deadline looming, industries are still wondering what the deal really means.
US and Chinese trade delegations are set to meet next week to talk on an extension of the tariff pause that expires in August. The trade talks are also expected to cover rare earth minerals and other critical exports. Our Bahnur Magdoum reports from Beijing.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced that trade talks with China will resume next week in Stockholm, aiming to extend the current pause on tariffs set to expire on August 12. The talks, scheduled for Monday and Tuesday, will focus on avoiding a return to steep tariffs and explore key topics like China's exports, rare earth mineral restrictions, and oil imports from sanctioned countries. Benson called the current US-China economic relationship in a very good place. The timing of this is critical. If no deal is reached in Stockholm, the two sides may reimpose tariffs, risking another wave of trade tensions. The Trump administration appears to be pursuing a dual-track strategy, keeping communication with Beijing open and securing trade deals with other regional partners, like the recent agreement signed with Japan. That deal includes cutting auto tariffs and a massive investment plan, signaling Washington's intention of strengthening bilateral ties with key regional partners. Meanwhile, President Trump announced that he will be visiting China soon to meet President Xi Jinping, claiming that he was personally invited. He also praised the Japan deal as the largest trade deal in history, framing that this is proof that direct deals work better than complex negotiations. Manu Maktoum, AnewZ, Beijing.
The United Nations Security Council is urging greater efforts for global peace. The Council has adopted a resolution to strengthen peaceful dispute mechanism and called on member states to make full use of the tools listed in the UN Charter.
The United Nations Security Council has unanimously adopted a resolution aimed at strengthening mechanisms for the peaceful settlement of disputes. The resolution urges all UN member states to make full use of the tools outlined in Article 33 of the UN Charter, including negotiation, inquiry, mediation, arbitration, and judicial settlement. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called on member states to reaffirm their commitment to multilateralism and the peaceful resolution of conflicts through diplomacy, while upholding international law and the principles of the UN Charter to promote global peace and security.
Around the world, we see an utter disregard for, if not outright violation of, international law, including international human rights law, international refugee law, international humanitarian law, and the UN Charter itself, without any accountability. These failures to uphold international obligations are coming at a time of a widening geopolitical divides and conflicts. And the cost is staggering, measured in human lives, shattered communities, and lost futures. We need look no further than the horror show in Gaza, with a level of death and destruction without parallel in recent times.
Guterres also highlighted that peace requires deliberate choice and sustained effort, with the UN Security Council playing a central role in the global framework for peace and security.
The world's top court has issued a landmark ruling on climate change. It says countries that fail to protect the planet could be breaking international law. The case, led by vulnerable island nations facing rising seas, could have far-reaching effects worldwide.
The International Court of Justice delivered a landmark advisory opinion on Wednesday stating that countries could be in violation of international law if they fail to take measures to protect the planet from climate change. The decision follows a case led by Vanuatu and backed by over 130 nations, many of them small island states already suffering from rising sea levels, higher temperatures and worsening climate impacts. The court said failure to reduce harmful emissions could amount to an internationally wrongful act. It also ruled that states harmed by climate change may be entitled to reparations, decided case by case. While non-binding, the opinion reinforces the right to a clean and sustainable environment and could shape future lawsuits as legal and political pressure grows on major polluters.
Egypt's iconic coastal city of Alexandria is sinking. A mix of rising sea levels, weak infrastructure, and rapidly shrinking shores is eating away at its foundations. As climate pressures mount, many say the city's historic charm is giving way to a daily fight for safety.
Alexandria, a prominent Egyptian city with deep historical roots, is now slowly sinking due to rising seas, eroding shores, and failing infrastructure. Buildings are collapsing almost daily in Alexandria as rising seas, erosion and ground subsidence weaken Egypt's second city from below. Over the past 2 decades, the Mediterranean has claimed an average of 3.5 meters of shoreline each year.
In the past, when you come to the beach, there would be 10 to 12 umbrellas and 10 to 15 chairs for each area on the beach. Now, when the seawater rises a little, the sand goes down with the sea. You find that by the time the sand part gets smaller, the seawater pulls back the sand with it. No one today brings sand and put it by the sea.
Locals report constant repairs and visible cracks as salt water seeps into old foundations. Despite efforts to reinforce buildings, many are forced to abandon homes as damage worsens.
All my life, I have been living in areas overlooking the sea, and we used to see the sea all the time. The sea looks completely different now. It is completely different. Even the situation between the sea and the street has changed here. There are more street lanes, and the coast has been significantly eroded. The beach area now is approximately 30% of the area that existed before.
The slight rise in seawater and the coastal erosion it is generating of a few centimeters, this rise generate coastal erosions of a couple of tens of meters, and that advancement of the coastline is intruding seawater underneath the infrastructure, eroding it from the bottom up. This is why we see the building in Alexandria being eroded from the bottom up.
The government has responded with sea barriers, beach reinforcement and mass demolitions. More than 7,000 buildings are marked unsafe and thousands of new housing units are planned.
There isn't a day that passes without a partial or complete collapse of at least one of the existing old buildings that had a demolition order issued by the governorate. And because of the circumstances, like the building being private properties, and the existing units are resided by occupants who have no alternative, so they refuse to leave the buildings.
With the Mediterranean warming faster than many other seas, climate pressures are already reshaping life along Egypt's northern coast, and Alexandria's future looks increasingly fragile.
At least 61 wildfires broke out in Turkey in July. 4 people, among dozens of suspects for arson, have been arrested and 19 placed under judicial supervision. Emergency teams continue battling active fires amid ongoing evacuations and scorching summer conditions.
Turkey has recorded 61 forest fires between the 4th and 22nd of July. Turkish Interior Minister Ali Yerlikaya said that so far, 23 people have been detained in connection with the fires, 4 have been formally arrested, while 19 are under judicial supervision. the fires have intensified across western and southern provinces, driven by extreme heat, strong winds and low humidity. In Izmir alone, over 50,000 people were evacuated. The blazes damaged agricultural land, destroyed homes and forced the temporary closure of Adnan Menderes Airport due to heavy smoke. According to the European Forest Fire Information System, the country has seen 96 wildfires in 2025, burning more than 49,652 hectares. Tragically, at least 3 people have died near Izmir, including forestry worker and an 81-year-old resident. Fires also rage in southern Hatay province, where 920 homes were evacuated. New fire outbreaks have appeared in several regions, and firefighting teams are working around the clock to control them.
Day 2 of the IDEF 2025 Defense Industry Fair in Istanbul wrapped up with cutting-edge tech displays and high-level meetings. Our Nuray Mustafa is at the venue and brings the latest.
The IDEF 2025 17th International Defense Industry Fair, held in Istanbul, successfully concluded its second day today. With participation from over 100 countries, the exhibition has become a central hub for the global defense industry. Today was particularly notable for technological innovations and strategic meetings. The second day of the exhibition stood out with the presentation of the latest advancements in Turkey's defense sector. The country's leading companies, Aselsan, TUSAŞ or Roketsan, Havelsan and Baykar showcased their latest robotic systems, artificial intelligence-based control technologies, and high-precision weapon systems. Several new agreements and protocols were also signed in this field. One of the active participants in the exhibition is Azerbaijan. On 23 July, the Azerbaijan delegation held meetings with several Turkish companies to discuss technology transfer, joint production projects, and the cooperation opportunities in the defense industry. In addition, a variety of defense-related equipment and domestically produced communication devices presented by Azerbaijan drew considerable attention. Azerbaijani companies are aiming to establish new partnerships within the framework of the fair. The second day of IDEF 2025 also proved to be productive from a diplomatic standpoint. Various meetings were held and cooperation protocols and the letters of intent were signed. These agreements are expected to lay the groundwork for future joint production and technology exchange. According to the organizers, approximately 50,000 visitors attended the exhibition center on the second day. IDEF 2025 will continue until 27 July with more technological showcases and strategic agreements anticipated in coming days.
The UK and Turkey signed a preliminary agreement for the sale of Eurofighter Typhoon fighter jets to Ankara. Turkish Defense Minister Yaşar Güler and his British counterpart John Healey inked a memorandum of understanding during the Defense Industry Fair in Istanbul. NATO member Turkey has long aimed to buy 40 Eurofighter jets, which are built by a consortium of British, German and Italian companies.
This memorandum of understanding brings us one step closer to a comprehensive agreement on the Eurofighter Typhoon issue. We welcome this positive step toward our country's participation in the Eurofighter Typhoon community.
Syria has formally requested military assistance from Turkey to boost its defense capabilities and fight terrorist groups, according to sources from the Turkish Defense Ministry. Ankara said it will provide training, advisory services and technical support to enhance Syria's military capacity. The ministry stressed their goal is to support Syria's political unity, territorial integrity and contribute to lasting regional peace. The request comes amid rising tensions in Syria's Swayda province following recent clashes and Israeli airstrikes. Top Uzbek security officials visited Kabul to discuss border security and drug trafficking with senior Afghan leaders. The visit comes as Uzbekistan says the Trans-Afghan Railway could be completed within 5 years. Our Tamim Bahiz has more in Kabul.
In a significant development aimed at boosting regional connectivity and economic cooperation, Afghanistan and Uzbekistan have held high-level security and economic talks this week in Kabul. The acting Minister of Interior, Sirajuddin Haqqani, met with Uzbekistan's intelligence chief, Bakhodir Kurbanov, his deputy, and the commander of the Uzbek border guards. Afghan officials described the discussions as key to strengthening bilateral relations, enhancing border cooperation, and jointly combating drug trafficking. In a separate meeting, the acting Minister of National Defense, Muhammad Yaqub Mujahid, welcomed the Uzbek delegation and praised Tashkent's support for Afghanistan on international platforms. The Uzbek officials expressed satisfaction with what it called Afghanistan's improving security and economic conditions, and reaffirmed their commitment to deeper cooperation. These talks came just days after Uzbekistan, Afghanistan and Pakistan signed a key agreement in Kabul to begin the feasibility study of the Trans-Afghan Railway, a long-awaited project that could reshape trade across South and Central Asia. First proposed in 2018, the Trans-Afghan Railway aims to link Uzbekistan with Pakistan's seaport via Afghanistan. According to Uzbek Deputy Transport Minister, the railway is expected to be completed within 5 years and would serve as a vital alternative to trade routes that pass through Turkmenistan and Iran, routes increasingly affected by geopolitical tensions. As regional dynamics continue to shift, the Trans-Afghan Railway could become a cornerstone for stability and prosperity if the ambitious plans stay on track. This is Tamim Bahiz in Kabul for AnewZ.
Over in Armenia, a new poll by the International Republican Institute shows that Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's approval rating has declined to 13%, down 3% since last year. Joining us to talk on this is Richard Giragosyan, Director of the Regional Studies Center in Yerevan. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. First off, how relevant would you say these poll results are, and what kind of a trend do they signify?
Well, they are very relevant. This U.S.-implemented public opinion survey is actually the most reliable that's conducted in Armenia. And the findings should be a wake-up call for the Armenian government. However, this does represent a snapshot in time. In other words, what's equally important here is not just the trend of declining popularity of the incumbent government, but that there is no alternative still. The opposition, widely discredited, has suffered an even greater decline. So in the end, this should be a wake-up call for the incumbent authorities, but nevertheless, it's not as significant as it would seem.
Well, you're touching on this, but do you see Pashinyan's position being secure if no viable third option emerges apart from the opposition you mentioned?
Well, the government remains self-confident for a reason. In the last election, which was equally free and fair, the government was re-elected despite losing a war. And the lack of an alternative explains the self-confidence of the government. Without a viable, credible alternative, the real painful degree of this post-war period is that the population is actually deprived of a viable, credible choice in the coming election, which is set for next June.
How much could a potential breakthrough in the peace process with Azerbaijan help the incumbent government with the voters?
It could help.
We seem to be having some connection issues. Richard, do we have you back?
Yes, I'm sorry. What we see is not necessarily a breakthrough, but post-war diplomacy implemented by the Armenian government with both Turkey and Azerbaijan are consistent. And they are neither going to win more votes or lose more votes. At the end of the day, the coming election will be much more about local economics and politics.
Richard, thank you so much for joining us and providing us with your insight.
Thank you.
Now, as tensions deepen between Georgia and the European Union, visa-free travel is on the line. Speaker of Georgia's parliament has accused Brussels of using it as a tool of political pressure. Our Nini Nikolashvili reports from Tbilisi.
Georgia's parliament speaker Shalva Papuashvili is accusing the European Union of politicizing the visa-free travel issue, claiming it's being used to pressure the government. He argued that Georgia continues to face all technical benchmarks required under the EU visa monitoring process, particularly in areas like migration control and anti-corruption. Yet the focus, he says, has shifted toward political and ideological demands unrelated to EU visa policy. His comments follow the recent formal letter from the European Commission raising concerns about Georgia's political direction. Shortly after, the EU ambassador reportedly suggested that the EU visa-free travel could be suspended as early as September 1, a statement that Papuashvili dismissed as misinformation. The visa-free regime in place since 2017 is reviewed annually. While Georgia has previously passed those checks, Brussels is now becoming increasingly vocal about democratic backsliding and erosion of the core EU values. Papuashvili criticized the EU for linking visa access to recent legislation supported from the ruling party and the Orthodox Church, insisting that the Georgian government is unfairly targeted for upholding national values. While tensions rises and the European Parliament weighing in, the Georgia's European path is facing the most serious diplomatic strain in years, and the future of its visa-free travel could be caught in crossfire. It's Nini Nikolashvili reporting from Tbilisi, AnewZ.
Still with Georgia, the country reached a record $2 billion in tourism revenue in the first half of 2025, according to the National Tourism Administration. In the first 6 months of this year, Georgia saw 3.2 million international visitors, up more than 4% when compared to last year. The growth has been driven by strong increases in tourist spending by visitors from Israel, Azerbaijan, the EU and the UK, Saudi Arabia and Armenia. Azerbaijan is deepening its clean energy footprint in Europe. The country's state oil fund has acquired a major stake in a solar energy portfolio in Italy. The move reflects Azerbaijan's shift towards sustainable global investments and marks a new era in Azerbaijan-Italy energy cooperation.
In a landmark move signaling a pivot from hydrocarbons to renewables, the State Oil Fund of Azerbaijan, SOFAZ, has acquired a 49% stake in a 402-megawatt solar power portfolio in Italy. The deal was announced during a formal ceremony in Rome, attended by Italian officials, diplomats and SOFAZ leadership. SOFAZ, established in 1999 to manage Azerbaijan's oil and gas revenues, now controls over $66 billion in assets, more than 90% of the nation's GDP. Its 2024 investment return reached 6%, reflecting robust global diversification. The solar portfolio includes 14 power plants operational and under construction in the Lazio and Emilia-Romagna regions. Infinity Global retains a 51% stake and will continue managing the assets.
Through this strategic collaboration with Infinity Global, SOFAZ support the delivery of competitive, clean energy to meet Italy's growing energy needs, while contributing to local economic development and household energy access. As a forward-looking institutional capital provider, we remain committed to supporting strategic investment opportunities in Italy and across Europe.
Under long-term power purchase agreements, the portfolio will produce nearly 685 million kilowatt-hours of clean energy per year, enough to power 250,000 homes and reduce CO2 emissions by nearly 185,000 tonnes annually. This investment also boosts Italy's decarbonisation targets under the EU's Repower EU plan, reducing dependence on imported fossil fuels and advancing climate resilience. The The solar power investment marks a strategic shift in Azerbaijan-Italy energy cooperation, expanding beyond hydrocarbons into renewables. For Sofaz, it strengthens its long-term infrastructure portfolio, supports the EU's clean energy goals, and contributes to Europe's broader energy diversification and climate resilience efforts.
Kazakhstan is launching a joint project with the United States to develop rare earth metals, a critical resource for high-tech industries. Our Fariza Kalimurzina brings all the details.
The state-owned Tauken Samruk and the American investment group Cove Capital have started a joint project to explore rare earth metals in Kazakhstan. Geological exploration on the Akbulak site in the Kostanay region is scheduled to begin in the third quarter of this year. This information was shared by Nariman Absametov, chairman of Tauken Samruk, during a government meeting. According to Absametov, the site contains significant deposits of neodymium, dysprosium and terbium. These rare earth elements are essential for the production of powerful magnets. The estimated reserves at the Akbulak site amount to 349,000 tons of rare earth metals. Absametov also spoke about the second major project involving the Severnaya Katpar and Verkhneye Kayrakte deposits located in the Karaganda region. These deposits are among the largest tungsten reserves in the world, with more than 410,000 tons. The total projected investment for both projects is estimated at $1.1 billion. And earlier reports indicated that Cove Capital will fully finance the geological exploration at the Akbulak site until the reserves are officially recorded on the state balance sheet. A joint venture will be created in which Kaz Geology will hold a 25% stake and the American investor will own 75%. Currently, Kazakhstan is not included in the list of countries with confirmed rare earth metal reserves compiled by the United States Geological Survey. However, if the data on the Zhanak Kazakhstan deposit is confirmed, the country could rank third in the world in terms of rare earth metal reserves, behind China and Brazil. Fariza Kalimurzina, AnewZ, Almaty, Kazakhstan.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned to AnewZ.